Hey, everybody, welcome back to Unfinished Business Television, the November 2023 edition. Yeah, it might be a little late, but at least it came. I am your host, Jeff Galashaw, at Unfinished B2. And as always, with me is my co host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Happy bloody Black Friday, everybody.
Yes, it is that holiday season, and don't mind us if we're a little delayed in our reactions, little technical difficulty, but be ready because you're going to get a supersized edition this week because it has been a while. So we have plenty of news, plenty of trailers for you, as well as on our upcoming review editions, a little extra for you. So let's get started. Okay. Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele's production company, is rebooting the movie The People Under the Stairs, the classic Wes Craven directed horror film. For those of us here, that is a horror movie classic. And I know it's a very underrated cult classic out there in the world. I have mixed feelings. I don't think it needs to be remade. It's perfect as is, but I understand maybe in the time that have come, you can maybe add more social commentary to it and, update maybe some of the scares and technology. I thought at the time it was brave for what it was saying, because it was also one of the few horror films that starred, an African American actor, a teen actor, Brandon Quentin Adams, child actor extraordinaire, who some people might remember from The Sandlot, some episodes of Moesha. He was also in the Mighty Ducks movies before Keenan took over. Um, there's room for, maybe a new version as long as it's not word for word remake. But, does it really need to be made? No. But when has that stopped anybody before? Andre, what are your feelings on this?
So I'm actually a big fan of the original Wes Craven movie, and I think that I'm not surprised that they were going to remake it. It's kind of overdue at this point. You could definitely tap into a lot of social commentary that I think the original had touched on, but now you could really dial it up in the remake. So I think Jordan Peele's the right guy, at least to oversee it as a producer. You get the right kind of actors in it. It probably could be, one of those movies that, God willing, like John Carpenter's A Thing, it could maybe surpass the original. I'm not sure if that will be the case, but there is that potential because I don't think the original's a sacred cow. It can be definitely reinterpreted into something a little bit more substantial. But yeah, it's a little bit of a tough one because I really do like that movie. I think we should do as a deep dive one day.
Never say never because, the whole thing, I think we haven't chosen it as a deep dive is I guess when we try to do deep dives, we try to take a look at maybe films that are underseen or haven't been talked about in a while. And I always feel like The People Under the Stairs is always on people's minds, so to speak, or their knowledge, even though it is underrated. But I think among like film fans and especially horror fans, it's a film that's commonly discussed. So we will just have to see what happens with that. Next, we have maybe an official casting for the upcoming Fantastic Four movie with Pedro Pascal playing Mr. Fantastic after supposedly such actors as Diego Luna, Adam Driver, and Matt Smith passed. Andre, you're more of the comic book movie fan. How do you feel about this casting?
I'm very torn by this casting, and I'll tell you why. I like Pedro Pascal. I've really enjoyed him, especially in that Nicolas Cage movie, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Obviously, The Mandalorian stands out. His work in The Last of Us, I understand, is also very praised. So I can understand the reasons for maybe going for him because he is an up and coming star and somebody that is probably on the verge of becoming a draw, if he headlines a movie like The Fantastic Four. But then I heard something that really bothers me, and this goes back to the state of Marvel right now, which is their stunt casting based on this idea that they have to get diversity in their movies and not in the right way. So my understanding is that they have at least, even if they're not signed, they have a couple of actors already lined up for the entire Fantastic Four cast. And the feeling, according to Kevin Feige, and this is allegedly what I'm hearing, is that he felt they were too white. So, as part of the diversity quota, they're like, oh, well, Pedro Pascal, he's Latino, but he could kind of be, uppity. So let's just throw him in because apparently no other big name actor wants to do it. And it's down to like, apparently guys like Jake Gyllenhaal, which I don't know how you explain the fact that he was Mysterio in Far From Home. They were thinking of him. They were offering to Adam Driver, but most of these guys wanted too much money and they didn't like the script, which apparently, allegedly, Sue Storm is the real star of the movie. That's what I'm hearing. So because of that, they can't get a lead actor to play Reed Richards. And I guess the next best thing is to go into the minority pile of actors. And it doesn't sit right with me because we've already had so many other interpretations of Fantastic Four that have not been great. You could say what you want about the Roger Corman movie for how cheap it was, but at least, hey, they made an effort to make it look something like the comic book, even on a $1 million budget. Here, it's just like, well, who are we appealing to? The stockholders that put in money for Disney movies and say, well, you have to check in all these boxes. It's like, come on, guys, if it's going to be a period movie, then let it be just like what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and the rest of these guys have created. Why do we have to keep changing shit for the sake of pleasing people that are not going to go to the theater to begin with? So if you want to do a Latino character, go and ask Sony to take the El Muerto rights back. Since Bad Bunny's not going to do it, do that Latino character. Maybe push Miles Morales at Spider-Man pretty soon. There's your diversity. You got hundreds of diverse characters in Marvel. Why do we have to keep race swapping shit? That's what I can't stand right now. I mean, maybe he'll impress me. I'm going to give it a chance if he is the guy. And if it's good, then I'm going to stop complaining. But right now, I'm just sick and tired of this shit with Marvel.
Well, I have no problem with this casting because realistically, I tried thinking of other actors who they could have cast, and I'm like, while I like Jake Gyllenhaal, I'm just like you said, he was Mysterio, or are we in like Marvel Universe version Q69 or something like that? If we're gonna put him in it. And Pedro Pascal has that right amount. He has the sandy, he has that gray and black, black and white sandy hair. I have no problem with him kind of playing the smartest man in the Marvel universe. I mean, to me, it works. I mean, I might have not liked some of his past roles, but I think he's a very capable actor, and I have no problem. And he's not above the line star, so he kind of fits in. He's not obviously going to be the star of the film. This is going to be more of an ensemble. And, we both know the names they want or supposedly want to play the rest of the roles. Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, Ivan Makarak as the Thing, and Javier Bardem as Galactus. Which, okay, here's my thing of Galactus. I don't want to see him realistically portrayed on screen. But this being a big budget movie, I feel like they're going to try to with effects. I thought it was much more effective. And even though I know everybody hated pretty much the other Fantastic Four film, but it was much scarier when you never saw him and he was just a voice and a cloud. because he's bigger than the universe. That's scarier. You know, we don't always have to be visual, people. Look at horror films. Sometimes the suggestion scares you more than anything visually. Come on, look at Ant-Man when they put, oh God, what's his name as MODOK? You know, that might have been better as an idea than a visual. You know, I understand why it was needed, but come on.
I also want to add, Jeff, that there are people probably watching that are wondering, well, you had John Krasinski and Doctor Strange playing Mr. Fantastic. Why is he not in this movie? So apparently, his casting obviously was a fan-based thing that Kevin Feige decided to indulge in. But the reality with John Krasinski, as great as he is, even for those few minutes he had as Reed Richards, there's two things. Actually, three. One is he is a variant. So the fact that he's from a different timeline means they can recast the actual Earth 616 Reed Richards. I know that's confusing as hell, but that's the way they would explain it. Number two, at the time he was cast, John Watts, who does all the Homecoming movies with Spider-Man, he was set to direct the Fantastic Four, and apparently, I think Krasinski was like loosely attached to his version of it. And then when Watts dropped out because he was getting tired of Marvel, I think he followed him at the same time, so he didn't want to commit to another director. That's a rumor. I don't know if that's true. And the third reason I think is a little bit more obvious, and that is John Krasinski right now has a pretty hot directing career, and he's not looking to have a long-term commitment to pop up in Marvel movies left and right that are going to interfere with his schedule. So those are the reasons why he's not the Reed Richards in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie.
Well, I mean, I just be like, just remember, Krasinski, Peter Berg had a hot directing career once. once. I'm sure his career's fine, but you know, if Mark Wahlberg's not involved, I don't know. Moving on, we have Superman Legacy, James Gunn's baby, that he is praying saves not only the whole movie series, but maybe his film future and job as head of DC Films. It was announced this week that Maria Gabriela De Faria will be playing the villain, the engineer. I remember her from a sci-fi channel series that was an adaptation of a graphic novel. And oh, she is very beautiful. I'm shocked she's playing the villain. Again, I don't know anything much about the character. The engineer, apparently Warren Ellis, introduced it when he was doing his Superman run. But reading the article, I was interested in all these other castings that I did not know about, like Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern, Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho, Isabella Mercado as Hawkgirl, and Edie Gathagi as Mr. Terrific, as well as news that Jacob Elordi turned down his Superman audition as he didn't want to be in a superhero movie. Andre, again, since you are our more comic book related, I guess, correspondent, what do you think of this news or these castings?
Well, I have two thoughts. One is there is a rumor that Brainiac is the villain. And if that's the case, that is long overdue because that's one of the biggest Superman villains that they've been avoiding on film for a long time, except when Tim Burton was going to do Superman Lives and Christopher Walken was going to do it. As you've seen the John Snow documentary, they have the photos of the artwork. So I think that's the hidden bad guy they have not yet revealed yet. And we'll probably hear about that casting pretty soon. My sense, and this is my second thought on Superman, and you could definitely tell this is going to be different than the previous interpretations we've seen on screen. Yes, they've had to get away from Richard Donner's direction. It was classical. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves Christopher Reeve, but it was time to move on from that. You could tell already what James Gunn's trying to do, which is he's trying to really deep dive into the geeky part of the DCU. So he's going for those obscure characters. He's going for the jugular by throwing in the Green Lantern, throwing in very much establishing his DCU right away. And I guess to try to make it more action packed. So it's not going to be a movie of Superman saving a bunch of people or getting the cat out of the tree. We're done with this. This is 2025 when this movie is coming out. People are expecting something that has a nice meet in the middle kind of deal where maybe you bring back sort of the lightness of the Donner movie, but then you also have like sort of the kick-ass action of the Zack Snyder Man of Steel movie. And then we're not even going to talk about Superman Returns because that was just completely botched. So yeah, I think again the biggest issue for me when it comes to James Gunn's plan is simply the fact that all these plans got announced while you still had a bunch of Snyderverse movies that hadn't come out yet. They've been bombing left and right. And will people give his direction a chance after having sitting through The Flash and but we'll talk about Blue Beetle another day. But this Aquaman sequel, which now Jason Momoa says is the end of the line, like there's not going to be any more Aquaman movies. Are people going to care after that? You know, that's what I'm really wondering about. Can James Gunn really impress people enough that they'll turn around and say, "Oh, DC's the shit now"? I'm not sure right now.
I'm like, well, with the Aquaman, I'm just like, the last Aquaman, he'll be in, and we're starring in. Because, well, we all know he's been rumored to be maybe portraying Lobo in a future DC film. But also, I mean, that's the only way you're going to really get people to go see, Aquaman 2, because it's not looking too good. It looks basically, we're going to just jumble the first film and put everything right back. It's like, same villain, more powerful this time. Oh, and the guy he was fighting, his cousin, oh, it's a buddy comedy now. I'm going to teach you how to lead, sort of. And you're going to learn humanity for humans. I'm just like, and I can't even say the problem is that it was rushed, because it's like, how long have we been waiting for it? At this point, I'm just like, I'm hoping somebody takes the controls or took the control so that it's not the shipwreck that Shazam 2 was. That's all I can hope for at this point, Though, if you want to throw in Rachel Ziegler in there, go for it. Anything to up this movie's potential. Just don't bring in some villains that no one's ever heard of, because certain actors don't want to appear in the film. But anyway, we'll move on. Staying within the DC universe, Supergirl World of Tomorrow is going forth. They rehired the writer who they had hired when they originally were going to make this movie more as a continuation from the Supergirl from the Flash movie. But obviously, since that's not a good game plan to go forward, the writer is totally rewriting this Supergirl movie, I guess pretty much from scratch. So who knows if this is going to be an origin story, or if, again, going with maybe James Gunn's DC universe, we're just going to throw things in the middle of it.
It's a sad shame. I'm not gonna lie, because Sasha Callie, who played Supergirl in The Flash, was one of the bright spots with that movie. I kind of was
Yes.
like, okay, a little bit darker, a little bit more badass, and a little bit more tortured. That's kind of a different interpretation than blonde-haired, hot-looking Kara. What was it, Kara Zell, Kara Lee? Forgive me, DC fans. I haven't seen the Helen Slater movie in a very long time. But yeah, I mean, I'm skeptical because they did hire a writer with not a lot of experience. That's usually a red flag when it comes to these type of movies, especially in the Marvel universe these days. Just we got to wait and see how this actually pans out, who they cast, and another thing that bothers me about James Gunn, and look, I don't want to keep like make it seem like I have
What
a James
doesn't?
Gunn hate. I actually do appreciate his talent. I love Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was a fan of his before that. I loved Super with Rainn Wilson. I thought that was a fantastic movie. Um, I don't like one day going out and he goes on Twitter and he's like, "Oh, you know, we had some talks with Dwayne Johnson and with Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot. We're like, well, we're gonna maybe do some business with you in a few years' time," and then especially in the Gal Gadot case, it gets mixed up, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do Wonder Woman 3. They said they have some big plans for me." It's like, no, Gal. They said basically you're done, but maybe we'll bring you back at some Crisis of Infinite Earths plot down the line, or maybe recast you in a different role. I don't like when he's doing that, and he did the same shit with Sasha Kali, which basically says, we're not going to continue with your Supergirl because your movie sucks, but hey, maybe we'll bring you back down the line as Livewire, or it's one of these other characters in the DC lore. It's just give me a break, dude. Like, be up and honest with the fans, and maybe get off Twitter every now and then because you're just confusing the audience.
That's true. I do wish you would stop updating. Supposedly, just like let the things marinate a little. Stop announcing plans before you actually do them. But in sticking with, I guess the first half of the show is going to be Marvel and DC news, guys. Okay, hey, well, we'll talk about the SAG after. Trust me, but things are just starting to move forward again. So. Because of Jonathan Major's ongoing legal trouble, don't mean to laugh. There has been discussions that they're going to pivot away from Kang as this phase's major villain, and maybe set up Doctor Doom, as the new major villain. This also kind of seems like it might be true because director Destin Daniel Cretton, who also directed what was Shang-Chi, has exited directing Avengers Kang Dynasty. I can see Marvel probably doing this out of their best interest, but it is kind of abrupt and strange. I guess they don't want to recast the actor, even though this storyline has set up the easiest way to recast him, since there are 50 million different versions of him throughout the Marvel universe. But I'm hoping there is a plan, and this just isn't in crisis mode, though. Marvel always seems in crisis mode these days. So, Andre, what do you think about all of this?
Okay, so first off the bat, it's not confirmed if they are fully moving away from Kang. There's been conflicting reports that
Okay.
they're going to probably still go forward with him. They're just not 100% sure if Jonathan Majors will still play the part. So that
Okay.
remains to be seen. But here's the thing I'm going to say, and this is why I think they will actually move away from Kang. Put Jonathan Majors' issues aside. Like right now, for the moment, he's innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. That will probably change once he's actually tried and there's actually a verdict. And of course, if they even weigh the other issues that have been brought up with previous incidents and cases and allegations. So that I feel like that's got to be a separate issue for one moment. I've been thinking a lot about the way they've been handling the Kang story in general with this whole multiverse saga. If you go back to when we had Thanos in the Infinity Saga, it was a slow burn that built up to Infinity War, right?
Yeah.
You saw that shot of him at the end of Avengers where, his face turns and you're like, holy shit, he's coming. We know what's about to go down. If you're a Marvel fan, or even if you're not, he's going to be a serious threat to the Avengers. And then little by little, we're slowly getting him out of the shadows, right? We see him in Guardians of the Galaxy where we establish he's Nebula's father. And then later, actually, Gamora and Nebula's father. And then Age of Ultron, where they're all like, yeah, somebody else has got a hand in all this, and we got to figure out who that is. You have those little setups, and you see the end with the gauntlet. Again, he's coming. So it's like slowly building up, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Kang, it's been like, you had him show up in Loki, where he is he who remains, and I didn't even know that was his character's name on that show. I thought he was actually King the Conqueror because that's what he was announced at the Disney Investor Day. And
Okay.
then he shows up, he gets killed off, and then you see Loki come back into the whole TVA, and you see the statue. Everything's changed in the TVA world, and then we see him in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where you're thinking, okay, this is the legit Kang. This is the comic accurate one, just like as he's depicted. And I'm thinking, watching this movie, he's going to escape, and then he'll become a bigger threat down the line when they do the Kang Dynasty. I didn't expect a C-list character like Ant-Man was going to defeat him, and then had that bizarre post-credit scene or mid-credit scene where you see these, like, I don't know, it just looked laughable to me to see all the different Jonathan Majors in different costumes and makeup, and all in that stadium. It looked ridiculous. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel like, oh my God, this is going to be more dangerous than we expect. This just looked laughable. And the bottom line is, yes, Jonathan Majors is a very good actor, issues aside. But Kang has been like Kenny from South Park. He keeps getting killed off. Then there's another one, and he gets killed off again, and then there's another interpretation, and there's like the good guy interpretation with Victor Timely in Loki season 2. And at this point, I'm like, why is he threatening? What's making him so powerful that he has to be the big bad? Other than the fact that, oh, Jonathan Majors is a very good actor, but he doesn't strike me as a scary motherfucker. Okay, once you bring in Doctor Doom and Galactus, or even the Beyonder, then I'm gonna feel pretty serious that you got a serious threat in the Marvel universe. Right now, Kang has just been like a joke, and I think they're starting to realize that. And so pivoting away from Kang is not just because Jonathan Majors has problems. It's going to be because your writers, your Rick and Morty writers that are so beloved on the part of Kevin Feige, who for whatever reason has a fetish for that show, have been dropping the ball left and right and not making a serious threat out of this character. But now that you got some of these licensing issues off of your back, once you acquired Fox and got the Fantastic Four and the X-Men rights back, now you got room for some really scary bad guys like Galactus and Doctor Doom. And maybe down the line they redo Apocalypse and don't have him looking like Ivan Ooze.
Well, I hear what you're saying, because you got to keep in mind, like you said, with the C-list villain, even back in the day when I used to read comic books, Kang wasn't really that big a villain. And currently, he just feels like, from the Marvel movies I have watched that he has been involved in, again, I haven't seen Loki season 2, he just feels like we can't really think of individual villains for these guys to fight in their sequels. So he's going to be our fill-in villain, so he always seems like a substitute teacher. Like, somehow we'll write him in, and then it'll be this version of Kang, and then we allow them to be defeated, or we allow the hero to defeat them. But just so you know, like at the end of Ant-Man, hey, there's this many more different versions of him. So it just feels like, so then anytime any writer who's writing any of these Marvel movies can't think of a proper villain, it's like, hey, I know, let's go to Kang. It's sort of like Ice-T on Meet You at the Undercover. We can't think of a good villain, so let's just have Ice-T guest star again, trying to take down Malik Yoba again. Where it's just like, well, good actor, nice to see you, but really, again? Didn't this character at some point get killed? And he still came back?
I want to see Kang. Yeah. So my prime years as a Marvel Comics fan were from 1990 to 1995. So I was buying the trading cards. I was playing the video games that were coming out, even the games that came out in the arcades. I collected the Toy Biz toys that were coming out, like the X-Men figures and Marvel superheroes, even the Spider-Man cartoon figures. I don't recall at any point in that time when I heard of Kang the Conqueror, or that King the Conqueror was like a big deal, that they had to make him like a big boss in any of those games or cartoons. Kang was never a big deal at that time. But now we're making him a big deal because I guess he was like maybe for a couple of runs in the 60s and 70s, he was a bad guy. I mean, they just that's another reason. Like the people that have come out to see these Marvel movies that made billions of dollars for you were the ones like our generation that really grew up in that period where Marvel was really blowing up. And Kang was not a factor in any of that.
Well, I mean, my thing is, from my memory, Mandarin was more of a dangerous and memorable villain than Kang ever was. And look at what they did to him, you know? And to answer your question about why the Rick and Morty writers, Kevin Feige, might keep hiring them, I think it's because since Rick and Morty is like this cartoon satire of like sci-fi and sci-fi genres, of course, Kevin Feige thinks, oh, these guys know science fiction. And it's like, no, they know jokes, but they don't necessarily know sci-fi actually, or, you know, any science or the law of physics, you know, so he's not, it's sort of like, hey, it's sort of like, think of it as George Santos. It's like, hey, I've got this resume. Then once he gets the job, you realize, hey, he has none of the qualifications, but we're stuck. So now we just have to go forward. So I look at it like that. We're going to talk about Rick and Morty writers. And poor She-Hulk. So moving on, but staying in the sci-fi universe, Deadpool 3 has been moved to July 26, 2024, pushing Captain America Brave New World till Valentine's Day 2025. Obviously, people more want to see a Deadpool movie than they want another Captain America, you know, starring Anthony Mackie. But you know, I have nothing wrong with any of this. I'm just happy that they finally got a date and that they're moving forward for a Deadpool movie that I'm sure will skewer the whole Marvel universe and its trends. And now with updated jokes. And
So yeah, this move I think comes for a couple of reasons. The biggest is right now the Marvels is not doing well, and Marvel in itself has been having a terrible year outside of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So they know for a fact that they get Deadpool 3 right, that's their shot in the arm. And people do actually want to see what's it going to be like when Hugh Jackman enters the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then having all these setups and bringing back all of these characters from the Fox universe to show up. They know that's going to be a big event. It's going to be the event that Doctor Strange was not, that it was supposed to be. And so by doing that, it's the only movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that's coming out next year. Everything else has been pushed aside because I think they need that time to recalibrate and to reconfigure the movies that, like Captain America, that have been shot but need work, and the ones that are just about to start, but because of the strike, they need more time to get the scripts right. They need to make sure they get everybody cast. So those are the reasons I think they want to solely focus on maybe slowing down, try to end the fatigue, get everybody back hooked in by having Deadpool 3 out. But as far as Captain America is concerned, I think that apparently the reasons for the pushback is because the test screenings have not been good. They want to rework it. And apparently, this is just a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but they say that the plot kind of ties in with a certain ex-president and a certain incident that happened on a certain day. And now they're kind of uncomfortable with that because it's a little too on the nose and a little too political. And given the state of things, they know they need an audience. And even though I don't like this particular ex-president, people don't want to have their politics injected into a movie these days, unless it actually is explicitly that subject matter, biopic or whatever the case may be. So I think they want to really rework it to try to fit that. And everybody's like, "Oh, why are you putting it on Valentine's Day? That's like a dead zone." Well, it's also Black History Month, and they think they could get the Black Magic, the Black
You know,
Panther audience to show up because, oh my God, it's a black superhero movie with a black leading man, and he's going to be the new Captain America. Um, I hate to break it to you guys, but as much as I like Anthony Mackie's not a draw. He is, I mean, and the way that the Falcon has been built up in these movies, tell me where you honestly feel enough for him that you think he can handle an entire 2-hour movie when really he's probably better off just having a season 2 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I don't know if the black audience that came out for Black Panther is going to come out as hard as they did for, Falcon in a bright red, white, and blue Falcon suit. And he's going to basically be in a movie that really is like the sequel to The Incredible Hulk without the Hulk. I don't know if that's going to work, to be quite honest. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't see it making that kind of money. And I think Marvel knows that, which is why they need time to really figure that shit out.
well, I think another problem with Captain America: Brave New World, and I didn't see Falcon and the Winter Soldier the series, so keep that in mind, is that Falcon has always seemed more of a friend or a sidekick character more than a major character. So you don't really know that much about him personally. And realistically, if it wasn't Captain America, Steve Rogers, we like him because kind of like this, I guess, kind of the Spider-Man history. Here's this weakling who was really patriotic, who then finally got his chance to really serve his country and become a superhero, but then became a man lost in time. But he then became the model for everything that people want America to be. Moralistic, upstanding. Always loyal to his friends, and he didn't have any of those negative aspects. But again, the only reason it was interesting is because the first film we tell his history. The second film, we throw him in this whole conspiracy theory with a jaded character like Black Widow. So for him to work off of, because quite frankly, and I know this is going to be sacrilegious to people, Steve Rogers alone fighting an enemy isn't that interesting, because there's nothing to his personality except for that morality. He's kind of a Marvel's version of Superman. Because he's fine, he's upstanding, he stands up for what's right, and he kind of has this like kind of schoolboy romance, with characters who have aged past him. So he'll always be old man Rogers in a way, matching Mr. Rogers, sort of. So and the Falcon, maybe there's room to grow because again, the way his character has been treated. He also is like this fine, upstanding, but he's a man in time, but there's still nothing that interesting about him that sets him apart. Except this time, he's a person of color. That's about it. Yeah. And
yeah, let me add to that, Jeff.
Okay.
Because this adds to the problem. So yeah, you got it totally right with Steve Rogers. Like he was that puny kid with a big heart who wanted to defend his country. And we saw that arc play out all through those Captain America appearances in the MCU. With the Falcon, it's like we saw him first introduced in the Winter Soldier as, oh, he buddies up with Steve Rogers. He kind of had a past where I guess he did some drugs, he cleaned up, and he's helping veterans. Okay, that's nice. Then the rest of his appearances up until the show were him just being another Avenger and still being like Cap's partner until he gets snapped away, and then he comes back, and then he just gets handed the shield like nothing. Like there really wasn't an arc to really build up to that moment. And then, of course, you get to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where, in a nutshell, he's uncomfortable having the shield, so he hands it back to the Mistonian, and then the government decides, oh, we're going to crown a new Captain America, but he's going to be another white guy with mental issues. And meanwhile, we have to see Sam Wilson go through the Black experience in a very condensed frame of time in that show, which was only like, I think, like 6 or 8 episodes of him trying to get a loan for his family's business. He can't get a loan because of the snap. He gets stopped by the police in one episode, and he kind of resents the fact that he was passed up as Captain America. And then by the end, oh, now I can throw the shield. Oh, Wakanda gives me a new suit that's actually red, white, and blue. And he gives this big woke speech about, oh, nobody's going to accept me because I'm black. I'm like, that's going to make me sympathize with you, maybe to a certain degree as a black American. But you have not given me enough drama and enough substance for you to get to that point of becoming the new Captain America. Now, maybe this movie will be able to do that. I don't think we've earned that point yet. And that is the problem, where you think the audience is going to show up because I'm Black Captain America. No, that's not it. People came out for Black Panther because they had not seen a movie like that, where you have Afrofuturism at the forefront and a really strong story dealing with a rich Black family that wasn't coming to America. And you have this great performance by Michael B. Jordan showing the real Black experience within the world of Marvel, but doing it in a way where it's still entertaining, it's still dramatic, and you feel for those characters. This ain't it. This is just pandering, and that's going to be their problem that they're going to realize when that movie hits.
Oh, man. Well, we'll see what happens with that film. Didn't expect that news story to get so much traction, but glad it did. Venom 3 is not only filming, but is now going to continue filming for a November 8th release of next year. No offense to some of you fanboys. You complain that there's no good, Marvel movies. This is on you. Because you keep going to see these not great films. I like Tom Hardy as much as the next guy, but come on. Sony is just so happy that this is making money, and so far it's the only one that's worked. And I'm just like, at this point, he already faced Carnage. We already had his kind of origin story. You're already rewriting. So who's he going to face this time? And is it going to be, again, you trying to write in, oh, he's almost going to go against Peter Parker? Or is this, again, another Q24 universe where, Peter Parker and Spider-Man are different, So I'm just like, stop it. But again, money talks, bullshit walks, and this is the perfect movie that proves it. Again, I might be wrong. Maybe this will be the good one, because don't forget, you always have Jared Leto scaling the Empire State Building for his album release. So he's trying to show, see, I face a true fear in human life. So Mobius 2, people, come on. And that is all I have to say about that.
I agree with you. This is definitely on the audience, because that first Venom movie, which to this day I have not seen. I've only seen Let There Be Carnage, but that movie probably should have bombed, and it would have stopped Sony from doing all these Spider-Verse movies outside of their animated films, which I think are superb. But once that made money, that emboldened them to strong arm Marvel and be like, we could take Spider-Man out if we want to. It's our license. And they cut their deal, and now they've been legitimized thanks to the world of the multiverse. And so now they feel like they can ramp up every other licensed character under the Spider-Man license. And so, yeah, Venom is the only one that's proven to have a success, whereas Morbius did not. And we're going to talk about Madam Web, because I have some thoughts on that. But honestly, I think, look, I actually think Tom Hardy's okay as Venom. I think he was the right choice for it. I just wish he was in the MCU, just because I think Feige would have maybe pulled back some of the humor and all the jokey shit, or maybe he would have doubled down on it these days. Who knows? But I think that, yeah, Sony's getting carried away. They don't have a plan. You could see that in Morbius with the end scene. And, I don't know how many people are actually going to see this versus Let There Be Carnage, because Let There Be Carnage was kind of an event. People wanted to see Carnage on the big screen. I don't know who he goes up against in this next one. I think they're going to do, my understanding, the Agent Venom storyline from the comic books. I'm like, so what? I really don't care for this. You would have to like, certain people would have to drag me to see it drunk and maybe go to AMC and I have a free ticket. I'm kind of done with all this shit. I'm just like, stop it.
Well, don't forget, we still have Craven to look forward to also next year. And I'm just wondering if that's Sony's, maybe this will be Sony's big payday. Since Marvel's only putting out one movie next year, they're like, well, maybe the fans will pick up the crumbs of these, because at least they're superhero movies and supervillain hero movies. And
they're just going to add to the fatigue.
Well, I agree, but it also works because you have people who are not so inclined to the Marvel superhero universe who might think that these are natural extensions of, those Marvel universe movies, even though you don't see the Marvel logo, because let's face it, most people don't pay attention to things half the time. And, you're a casual moviegoer. So, okay. So, we also have finally the decision that everybody was waiting for, that Blade, the movie, will be R-rated, and it's going through its sixth script rewrite by Logan writer Michael Green after Mahershala Ali showed that he might be less interested in taking the role, which I can understand because it's taking so freaking long, and probably if this is the sixth rewrite, the scripts obviously weren't necessarily up to par when they were trying to make them all PG-13. So I'm looking forward to this film. I just want it to start being made already, and let this be less comedic, but as violent as a Deadpool movie. What are your thoughts, Andre?
There's reasons to be encouraged and reasons not. I think the encouraging part is that they recognized there was a problem. And from what I read, the previous scripts were apparently going to be more female driven, and Blade was like a supporting character, which is like, the movie's called Blade. Why would he be like a second or fourth lead? That's ridiculous. So I thank God they figured that out, that this has to be Blade. This has to be R-rated, just like the Wesley Snipes movie. Doesn't have to be overly violent, but just enough to know this guy's a badass. And also, it's going to carry a lower price tag. So typically, these Marvel movies now have not been doing great because they're carrying like $250 to $300 million budgets. This one's only going to be $100 million. So that's going to force the director, who, by the way, did the movie White Boy Rick. Yeah, it's going to force them to be more creative now. I know 100 million is still a lot, but it forces you to have to be like, okay, we got to do some practical effects, maybe not go crazy on the CGI and wild sequences. So that gives me some encouragement. Maybe they'll get it right. But I'm still worried because of the fact that they've undergone 2 director changes, 6 writers, and this was been delayed God knows how many times now. It was supposed to come out, a couple of weeks ago? That was the original release date, and now it's been pushed back 2 years. And this Oscar-winning actor has had to like pass up work because he's been waiting this long and almost like backed away. I say right now, if they don't meet their shooting start date, I think he's out, and I think they have to completely scrap this thing or recast altogether because if I'm Marshall Ali, I would be pissed. I would be like, why did I waste the last years of my life waiting for it to happen? And he's not young. He ain't like some 20-something kid you could do like, a 10 movie deal with. This guy's like, what, in his 50s or something? Like, you got to do this now. You made this. This is your bed. You got to sleep in it.
Well, I feel like this is sort of kind of like what Constantine faced when Keanu Reeves was starring in it, where the studio forced it to be a PG-13 film, and it's clearly an R-rated material film. And even the director who just directed the Hunger Games prequel, which is getting good reviews, even he said that diluted the film and made it not as good as it could have been. Now, I was familiar with the character, but I knew, pretty much the origins of the character. And I agree, like the film, it doesn't follow the comic book that well, but it was okay in its own right. Visually, it was great. It could have used a stronger story and maybe stuck to, the original comic book, but I won't say it's a horrible movie, but it's a bad adaptation. So I'm hoping maybe with this Blade movie, they realize their mistakes and can get it right. And I guess maybe since Disney isn't, so much being a family channel as much as they used to be and pussyfooting, so to speak, they are now open to like, hey, if you want to make it R, go for it. If it'll make us more money and this movie more money, we say go for it. Maybe they'll have to create like Marvel, like how they have the comic books with Max, Marvel Max for Punisher like comic book to let you know, like, this is for mature people. They might have to do the same with some of these Marvel movies. And, Albert Hughes even not only passed on this film, but asked why a real filmmaker would want to be, in that. And it's like, because they might want to be like James Gunn, where it's like, yeah, I'm a filmmaker, and yeah, you can see this is selling out, but I can also try to maybe put my own personal spin on it and then get maybe my side projects made. So that might be another reason. It's like, you directed Book of Eli. Don't attack somebody else for wanting to put an artistic spin, or what they choose to do with their career and then say they're not a real filmmaker. Like, who are you? Hello, you and your brother made, what was that, Johnny Depp movie comic book adaptation, and From Hell, and that wasn't exactly blazing up the screens either. Yeah, that wasn't exactly blazing up the screens, and I hate to say it, this is the one time where I was like, maybe Antoine Fuqua would be perfect for this, as a director. And so next,
Yeah, I think that with those comments on the part of him, you know, I that's like basically insulting Jon Favreau and Sam Raimi for doing Marvel movies. And they were the ones who really set the standard for the superhero movies that we have in this modern era. So maybe he's talking for like the inexperienced directors from the indie scene that show up, they get a Marvel movie and then maybe they can't handle it, they get compromised, they're under studio control. I've said before that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is no different than a lot of TV shows. Like basically Kevin Feige is Stephen J. Cannell. He creates the show, but he hires directors to execute, and he still has the final say at the end of the day. And maybe he puts like lieutenants, showrunners and producers to oversee his vision of things. And he only comes in whenever maybe the actors are having a problem or the storylines are going in the wrong direction. That's really all it is. So I could see from his standpoint, yeah, if you're directing, you come in, maybe you're handling the performances, but you're not having really much of a hand in the visual style or the action sequences. They have their own people doing that. But look, I don't want to fault anybody that wants to go out and do a Marvel movie. I'd love to do it, but I also know there's a reality that it's still a business. It's ultimately going to be Kevin Feige's production. And the best you could take out of it is to let it springboard your career and maybe get those A-list offers. It's helped for a number of directors. So don't knock it. It's a business, and not everybody in this day and age could become the next Scorsese or the next Spielberg, because we're in a different era where it's hard to be an innovator unless you're, the Daniels or Christopher Nolan. And that's like 1 in a million to happen in this day and age.
Okay. I would talk about the Marvels, but I feel like we'll tackle all the controversy behind that film when we both see the film and review it. So I'm going to move on to Echo, the series. It is getting a special consideration It's going to be coming out next year on Disney Plus. It's under the Marvel Spotlight banner, which will be the first film to go under, I guess, this blanket where there's no continuity within the rest of the Marvel universe. It's allowed to be its own thing, but still be a Marvel product. Which, as Andre has said before, you felt like by releasing it, they were just trying to burn it off after they've already approved it and filmed it. And this way, they can, I guess, follow their contract, release it. But again, we never necessarily have to hear from this character ever again. And
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this because a lot of people were really blown away by that trailer. And yeah, it looked impressive. It looked like an extension of the Netflix Daredevil series. It's brutal, it's dark, it's bloody, and you got the Kingpin in there. You saw some glimpses of Daredevil, so we know he's going to make at least one or two appearances in it. Um, so in one sense, I'm kind of happy that's encouraging people like, oh, maybe this is a shot in the arm, especially with the female lead coming off the Marvels. Like, there are all these haters, but oh, they love what they saw here. Um, it could be a step in the right direction if it's good. I'm not sure. I think that the trailer only maybe took the best parts of what they think people are going to like, but everything that I've heard and that's out there is that the show isn't good and it shouldn't have been greenlit to begin with. It was only greenlit, again, diversity quota. You have a character that's deaf and handicapped, and they could go out and say, oh, yeah, we have a deaf and handicapped character who's a superhero, although she's really more of an anti kind of a villain, to be honest. That's how they're actually going to depict her as a villain that has some humanity to her. The other issue is, yes, this Marvel Spotlight banner, people are thinking, oh, this is the banner they're going to use for all the darker Marvel movies, much like in the comics, you have Marvel Knights for the Punisher and Moon Knight and Daredevil. No, I think this is being done for two reasons. One is to not make people feel like they have to be forced to watch this and have to follow the rest of the MCU. It's like, oh, this is its own thing. And like you said, there's not going to really be much of a continuation unless the fan response is good, then maybe they would consider. This is also, I think, their roundabout way of basically, if the show, from what I heard, is not great and they expect it not to be great, that they could just like one off this thing, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing this whole deal where we're going to put out all the episodes at once, just like we did with Netflix. No, you're doing this because you're not happy with it. You just want to dump it, move on, and then hopefully the Daredevil series, which is getting reworked, and we'll talk about that in a bit, will actually fit more of what the fans want, and we could slowly put that one out. Um, I'm skeptical. Let's wait and see what happens with Echo.
okay.
Like I said, the trailer looks encouraging, but I'm still skeptical that the end result is going to be very boring and very uninteresting.
Okay. Well, like you said, speaking of the Daredevil series, it has hired Loki directors Benson and Moorhead, who I am fans of their film work. Again, I didn't see Loki season 2, and the show is getting a new showrunner, and they wanted to go back to the darker tone that it used to have. And it's interesting that, of course, it was shut down mid-production because of the actor strike, and now they've just decided now the actor strike is over, let's now just rework. I guess they're going to scrap everything that they had before and start anew. I don't know. But what are you thinking of that, since you did mention it in the Echo story? Mm.
Well, from what I read here from my job, it's not so much just the fan response to how he was depicted in She-Hulk, which, yeah, was kind of a bastardized, lighthearted version of Daredevil. Supposedly, Charlie Cox has not been happy with how this has turned out. He hasn't been happy that they didn't use his original double from the Netflix show, who actually went out and railed against Marvel for not hiring him. Yeah, these scripts and the direction they were taking were a little too light. There was some stuff I heard allegedly that part of the plot was going to deal with the NYPD adopting the Punisher suit, the skull, and how that was going to obviously be a little too political, so they might want to dial that back. Um, Here's my thing: whatever it turns out to be, I know they're going to rework it, and they're going to keep some things that they shot. I don't think they're totally going away from the Mayor Fisk storyline that's been rumored. My hope is more of what they did on Netflix, and bring back Karen Page, bring back Froggy Nelson, bring back the stunt team, keep it grounded. Don't go over crazy with the CGI. It could still be in the MCU. You could still make the Netflix shows like a vague history without completely dismissing the events. People will get it because you have the shows on Disney Plus now, so people will know. They'll go back and watch them. You'll probably even build up your viewership. And he's got to be different. Not everything has to be light and jokey. It's got to be serious and dark and as brutal as possible because you have the TVMA parental lock thing on the Disney Plus. So let's go with that. And then I think you could also win your audience back by showing, yeah, you could get a little bit dirty. I'll make a wrestling analogy for you, Jeff. So if you remember back the old days of the 1990s in the WWE, they were kind of cartoonish and light and going with cartoon character gimmicks like Doink the Clown. And it was turning off the audience. The people who were still watching were just hardcore fans who saw the good and the bad, but they overall enjoyed wrestling in general. But it wasn't making the company money. Their merchandising, the ratings were all in the toilet. But when they realized the times were changing in the era of Jerry Springer, South Park, Howard Stern was starting to really become a household name, they realized, yeah, let's get dirty. Let's push Stone Cold Steve Austin to the top. Let's have some like sexual stuff and bra and panty matches and, hardcore matches. And it actually made Vince McMahon $1 billion. Now, I'm not saying Marvel needs to go all that. They don't have to get all, gratuitous with foul language and nudity. But, it's like the end of Demolition Man when Stallone goes to Dennis Leary's like, you guys need to take a shower. You guys need to get a little bit dirty, referring to all the people who were, squeaky clean in the San Angeles future. Let's do that. Let's just get a little bit dark and dirty while still being appealing to the teens. And I think if you find a nice balance between the two, then the MCU will be back up and running. That's what I think.
Well, I'm just like, if you're gonna get dirty, does that mean we're bringing back the I would say the Netflix Marvel kind of good time girl Rosario Dawson, who is the lover of both Luke Cage and Daredevil?
You see, at this point, because of Ahsoka, I don't think she's going to do it unless you
No.
paid her a lot of money.
Well, she seems to be a Disney favorite. She has the Star Wars. She has these old Marvel episodes. She's in the Haunted Mansion. So, why not? Be a team player, Rosario, and bring back Luke Cage as a series, I say. Or, hey, you guys want to do a movie? I'm not opposed to it.
With Mike Coulter, don't recast.
Yes, exactly. Well, and give him advance warning. He's gonna have to hit the gym again. And so next we're almost out of the woods with Marvel. We have great cinematic eye Louis Leterrier, the director, who some of you might remember directed Hulk and a whole bunch of action movies. He wanted to direct originally Iron Man when they were thinking about bringing it to the big screen in the first place before they went with Jon Favreau. But they were like, yeah, you want Iron Man? We're going to give you Hulk. And that was only because he also passed on directing Thor, which strangely I think he might have been a good pick for, and Guardians of the Galaxy, which to me would have been more action oriented than character oriented had he directed it.
It's funny. It reminds me of the story of Adil and Bilal, the directors of Bad Boys for Life. when they met with Kevin Feige, and Kevin Feige's like, "Oh, what would you guys like to do?" Like, we'd like to do Deadpool, and if we can't get Deadpool, we'll do Blade. And they get Miss Marvel instead. It's like, really, we have to compromise on that. Um, I mean, Lucio, he's a good director. I liked Unleashed, and I even liked the second
Yeah.
Transporter movie he did. And his Hulk movie was fine. You know, recently he actually defended Edward Norton and was like, look, we were kind of lockstep, and he was a very strong, opinionated guy, but for the most part, we got along fine. And I understand the vision he was trying to go for, because you got to remember, it was 2008, The Dark Knight had come out. Superhero movies were generally dark, and he didn't quite get the direction that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to go in, which was a little bit more lighter. I don't know if he would have worked out for Iron Man. I think his style would have been too generic for that. Maybe Thor could have worked. He probably could have done Shang-Chi if they didn't have Dustin Daniel Cretton. But yeah, I mean, I would give him a job again if I needed to, for like something that wasn't, a sacred cow of a character. But, Favreau, I think, was great for Iron Man. Kenneth Branagh was decent for Thor. He brought the Shakespearean aspect to it, and hey, he brought in Tom Hiddleston. That was his boy, and then suddenly he blew up after that. Nobody knew who he was. Sure. And no, James Gunn was the only guy to really do Guardians of the Galaxy the right way. I can't see anybody else doing that. I mean, I would give him another job if he wanted it. There's plenty of characters he could adapt.
Yeah, I mean, I give him credit for doing well under pressure, because you're dealing with not only Edward Norton, but William Hurt, who yelled at him, telling him he knew nothing of actors, and he still managed to, bring in a film. I mean, there's parts of the Hulk that I like, there's aspects of it. But like you said, I guess my general problem, well, not problem, but I guess the thing that when it comes to Louis Leterrier is that he's, like you said, generic. He doesn't necessarily bring a special eye to it, but he gets the job done. So I appreciate that as a director. He hasn't done anything that's truly where you're like, oh, this is just shit. This is horrible. So, he's a good on the line guy. Like, yeah, hey, you need A, B, and C done, he'll do it. But, not necessarily, he's not going to be making Paul Thomas Anderson type films, But he can make a Paul W. S. Anderson film in a heartbeat, So, so I think that might be all of Marvel and DC news. And it only took us an hour. But to dip our toe back in a little, Kevin Feige's Star Wars project has been canceled.
Thank heavens, because who was really asking for that? I mean, the guy's already stretched thin enough with Marvel. You think the guy's going to save Star Wars just because he's a fan? No, if he's going to save Star Wars, you take Kathleen Kennedy's job. Simple as that.
Well, my thing with Star Wars is it's the same problem I have with Marvel right now, where, I mean, Star Wars started obviously before this, and the films were the canon, and then you had all the comic books, the movies, maybe some Ewok TV specials. That's all you had to keep up with. But now you have, like, every time you like blow your nose, there's a new series that now is either rewriting the history or adds to the history of Star Wars, and it's getting to be too much where you can't just be a casual fan, because then it informs other future things of Star Wars where you're like, well, I didn't watch that. Like this Ashoka show. It helps if you had seen, previous, like, was it the Clone Wars? It helps if you've seen that. But if you didn't watch that, you're like, okay, this is just another random character for me. And maybe it's just me, as I'm not into the Star Wars TV shows for the most part. So, it's a little much for me, going forward. And it also was like, I guess, with Kathleen Kennedy, it seemed like after the new trilogy was a hit, she was handing anybody who asked for a Star Wars movie deal, So I guess to show the different aspects of the universe, but now slowly but surely, all these are being canceled, which I think also uh, happened after they gave, Ryan Johnson the Last Jedi, and the audience hated it so much that they were like, okay, maybe we shouldn't let the directors have their own original vision with these storylines, so to speak. But I mean, that's why like Guillermo del Toro had his like Jabba the Hutt film canceled, which he claimed was going to be, like Scarface in space, and like that's intriguing. But again, it's sort of like me being on YouTube saying, "Hey, I've got an alien in my basement. I don't have any evidence of it, but it sounds interesting." So that's how I view like anybody talking about their Star Wars film. Like, yeah, you keep saying it was going to be like this, but we don't know what the final product would have looked like. So, yeah, these sound like all great ideas. And of course, you have Guillermo del Toro as a director who doesn't usually let you down, but it could also blow up in the face, because it could be another thing where it's like, yeah, you want to see that film, and maybe a handful of others do, but do the Star Wars fans at large A, want to see this, or B, even care? Because look at what they did with Boba Fett. It was like, this is a character everybody wanted to see a story about, and then they fucked it up because the story sucked. You know? Mm.
I'm going to say the controversial part that no Star Wars fan wants to hear. Star Wars isn't special anymore. It just isn't. Um, you basically have a trilogy now, the sequel trilogy, that was an event when we got The Force Awakens. People want to see Luke, Han, and Leia back on the screen, and they were never really fully reunited, and they were mistreated from a storyline perspective because they had no plan and they wanted to really push the new characters who never really fully connected with the audience. And we were at the point where basically we're back in 1985. And if you remember 1985 to like 1995, those were the dark ages of Star Wars, where you still had fans, but it was like the hardcore fans that just whatever they can hang on to, if the books, the comics, whatever few toys came out, they were still into it. But the vast majority of the audience moved on because the story seemed to be over. And there wasn't a sure guarantee that George Lucas was going to do the prequels. So they found new things to get into, like Rambo and Indiana Jones, and MTV, whatever was hot in the 80s, John Hughes movies. They were growing up and then they were selling their Star Wars toys at flea markets and antique stores. They were done. It's sort of the same thing now, except okay, now there's too much Star Wars product. Where before you had to wait 3 years for a new movie to come out. There you had, yes, the Clone Wars cartoon that kind of kept things going and brought in new fans. But otherwise, once that prequel series was over, it was the same deal. Everybody moved on. Now it's like we have so many shows, so many toys, and so many video games and such that it's just become so oversaturating the marketplace to the point where nobody really cares that much. You've ruined these characters. You've created storylines nobody can follow because now it's becoming like a giant chasing the dragon tale of you have to see this, you have to buy that. And it's too much at this point. You know, you could probably say, well, we give it a break, people come back years down the line, but it's too late. Nobody's going to care about the Old Republic. Nobody's going to care about the Rey movie and, oh, what's going to happen with Rey and the Rey Skywalker bullshit, which I think the ending of that movie was bullshit. The Mando movie, I was actually excited for until you screwed up the Mandalorian and this whole Mando universe that you were setting up. Now it's all over the place. It is tired. I am done. And it would take a world's weight to get me back into it as a general fan. God bless the hardcore fans. If you still love it, by all means, support it. I still have my fondness, my childhood appreciation, my favorite memories. I still keep my toys. But I'm done. It's over. Move on. Nobody cares. It's
Well,
fire
I think
Kathleen Kennedy.
I don't know about firing Kathleen Kennedy, but I agree. I have my fondness of my childhood years, tied into Star Wars and even these Marvel, well, the comic books, not and the characters, not necessarily the movies. But that's the problem. Like even with Marvel, you're oversaturating the market so that it doesn't feel special individually anymore. It's just this is another, so to speak, another chain in the whole link of everything instead of it just being there's this character, then there's this character. But now it's always, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they met up and did this together? You're like, yeah, it would be cool. That doesn't necessarily make it that interesting, though, or needed. And it's the same thing with Star Wars. Star Wars used to be something special on its own, even among all those other sci-fi movies, television series out there. Now it just feels like it's another one to go with, like, again, things like the Hunger Games or any of these sci-fi or big budget adaptations of anything. It just feels like, oh, it's just in the jumble. It feels like the Divergent movie series. How, when that first started, they were like, okay, we're going to do 5 movies. Then the first movie was an okay hit. But then by the second movie, they realized they lost half their audience. But now it's like, we got to keep going because we got to finish the story. Then after they made the third film, they were like, we still have 2 movies, but you know what? Let's just drop it. That's what it feels like at this point. And
This reminds me of the scene in the movie Big when John Hurt is like pushing this robot toy that turns into a building, and he's talking about like, oh, our marketing research and profit share and this and that, and it's like, but what's so fun about this? Why not make a robot that turns into a bug, which was basically Transformers Beast Wars? But like the kids are like, no, this shit's not fun. This is more fun. So these are idiots out in Los Angeles who, I don't know what metrics they follow, that they think people want more Ray movies, or that they think, well, we'll spin this off, we'll do this, we'll do that. Same thing with Marvel. Oh, we introduce Echo. People like Echo. Let's give her a show. Everybody likes that Agatha song from WandaVision. Let's give her a show, and let's give this character a movie, and this director a Star Wars movie. And you are fucking tone deaf. You don't get why people are going out and seeing this stuff. And then when you're losing money and you're making the same mistakes over and over, it is the definition of insanity.
well, I mean, you still have your tequila.
Get out of the bubble. Go to real America. Real America is not the West Coast. Go out to, like, I don't know, Sherman, Illinois, if that's even a real city, or Nebraska, and you tell me what they're buying and paying to see.
True. I mean, you still have a Takia Waititi making a Star Wars film that is marinating until maybe that gets canceled. And as he has said, he's not interested in coming back for Thor 5. And I don't blame him.
Okay, so yeah. First of all, his Star Wars movie isn't happening. He gets talk about that all day that he wants to. They're not making that movie. He's been talking about that now for 5 years. It has not been made. As far as Thor is concerned, I don't think it's so much that he doesn't want to do it, but I don't think Marvel wants him to do it. Because I recall Chris Hemsworth saying right after Thor Love and Thunder came out that he watched it with his kids and he thought, yeah, we went a little too far in the comedy. We went a little too corny. And he wants to go back to make it a little bit more serious. And look, the guy's not getting younger. He had a health scare recently. I don't know how he's doing today. But when you have a movie that, had a bigger budget but wasn't as profitable as the previous installment, you change the director. And I think it's time that Mr. Waititi does his own thing. Fuck Star Wars, fuck Marvel, just make the next Jojo Rabbit. He's got that soccer movie coming out with Michael Fassbender. Stick to that stuff. Get away from the franchise shit. You're better than this.
Okay. Wow. In other news, Darren Aronofsky has decided to make another film. He is going to make an Elon Musk biofilm based on the recent biography that was released by Walter Isaacson. Um, it kind of reeks of David Fincher making The Social Network type of film, where we take this director who's known for their precision filmmaking, though Darren Aronofsky is known more for experimental filmmaking, and trying to take again a real world figure and make it in maybe necessarily their own style. Again, we have to see what his vision exactly will be, but I mean, I'm down for it. I can't say I'm the biggest Elon Musk fan, but it'll be an interesting experiment to see on the big screen. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to do Elon Musk. I'm sure they're going to cast an English actor to do it, but I don't know who. Um, I'm wondering if they should wait on making this movie because I got a good sense that Twitter's about to blow up and that's going to start the downfall of this asshole. So I kind of want to, not like Social Network where it just stopped when Mark Zuckerberg became a billionaire, and yet we don't get into the political disinformation that's on Facebook and how that kind of hurt his reputation. But I heard they may be doing a sequel to Social Network, so we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, however, I'm more interested in the downfall than the rise. And yeah, I'm all for the movie, but I think let's wait it out a couple more years. Maybe it'll be the right time once they do it, or they could always reshoot the ending on the way.
Well, true, because since the person is still alive, you can always just keep adding, even as you're filming, though it might mess up whatever central theme you might have of the film. So next we have one of your favorite actors, Denzel Washington, is going to play Hannibal in a historical epic directed by Antoine Fuqua and written by John Logan, who also wrote Gladiator. I'm just happy Ridley Scott is not directing this film, or the Vin Diesel epic that he claims to have written for him to star in and direct. So we will see Denzel on the back of an elephant charging into enemy territory. Whether that elephant will be CGI, we'll have to see. And I guess dependent on his paycheck. But at least he won't look bored like the Equalizer movies.
Yeah, I do remember when Vin Diesel was like long attached to do Hannibal, and he kept talking about it for years. And then I guess just Fast and Furious, he kept needing that paycheck to keep playing Dominic Toretto and having his family. Um, I think it's an interesting idea, Denzel doing it, to do a big historical piece like that. And if you could get him in really good shape at his age and you make him look like a badass, I think that could be his next Oscar.
I'm just excited for this. The first time I've been excited for a Denzel Washington or Antoine Fuqua movie, probably since, whoa, that's a long time. Right, since American Gangster, when they originally were supposed to make it together. And
Yeah.
okay, so next, don't worry, folks, we only got a few more stories. Well, that's a lie. We got quite a few. There's like the 6 o'clock news. At least we're not repeating. John Wick 5 is being written. Big shock. They're trying to crack the why. And again, this reminds me of the thing you're talking about with Big, with the toy with John Hurd. It's like, I know why. You want money, but how are you going to have it make sense? Like, I can understand the prequel or even the television series they want to do of John Wick, but you're making another movie, and it's like, why, considering the end of John Wick 4 and maybe the how, that might be interesting too. So, I mean, if it looked, if it looks good enough, I'll probably be in the theater watching it. But again, is it needed? Probably not. What are your thoughts on John Wick 5?
Yeah, I think that they're gonna find a way through like sort of the I guess sort of the wordplay or the riddling of the Continental to kind of make it say, well, yeah, he's dead, but he's really retired. They're gonna do how weird John Wick's world can be. That's how I think they're gonna try to present it as he's been freed, but he's not necessarily dead. Um unless you do a prequel where he's de-aged, but I don't see the point in doing that. Um, if you, but since this is going to be, I'm not surprised because the last one made a lot of money, got the best reviews in the series, but it should be the last one, hands down, because there's a certain point with certain franchises where it gets a little fatigued and
Scream.
it starts to become a joke. And at this point, yeah, it goes into Scream territory where it starts to become a little bit silly. Uh, and I also think you're already doing these spin-offs that could potentially take off the ballerina spin-off. I don't know how the Continental's doing. And I'm always down for more John Wick, don't get me wrong, but I do want like a tight story and do it before Keanu really starts to look old, because you can kind of see it like when he's not shaven, he definitely looks like he's starting to show his age a bit. And then it's just a matter of what you do and who you put in. And does Donnie Young come back? Hopefully they don't bring the dog guy, because I didn't like him. He was annoying as hell. So look, I'm down for it. Just don't do the whole space idea that they were teasing. That's just
Oh, geez,
ridiculous.
no.
And don't
Um,
make it like the last Matrix movie, because that was shit.
I don't think anybody is in danger of ever doing that ever again. Um, Adam Driver had an interesting response to a fan who asked a question at a Q&A for the upcoming Michael Mann film Ferrari, where the fan asked him, "Hey, why does all the like crash footage in the movie look so shitty?" And Adam Driver's response was, "Fuck you, I don't know." Which I think is a proper response considering he's only the star of the film. He didn't make it, he didn't write it, he has no other input other than playing a character. And it's the most real response I've seen. I've ever heard an actor give. And my question is, why would you even ask him about that? You know?
Not even ask that question, but you have to remember too, most actors don't really like doing press for their movies. Some of them do it out of obligation, or they really love the movie that they want to go out and, try to get as many people to the theater as possible, that they're really proud of it. I'm not saying Adam Driver isn't proud of Ferrari. I'm sure he is, but there's some times of the day where you just get sick and tired of getting asked the same questions, and especially if they're the kind of questions of a critic being very critical of certain things, then you're going to push back a bit. Like the other day, I'll give you a story. Somebody, because I have my GI Joe fan film on YouTube. Every now and then, you get crappy comments from people who just for whatever reason are very negative, just like they are on the internet most of the time. But I had one guy who was like really trying to like go down hard on it and saying, "Oh, my 5-year-old kid can make movies better than this, and why is he fighting with the 2x4? Why is this effect looking like this and that?" Like doing almost like a whole dissertation in a YouTube comment. So rather than push back and yell and curse, I was just like, you know what? Thank you for your opinion. I actually value it. So now let's see you do your version of this. Let's see what you could do with $800 of your money and make this movie. I'm very curious. And let's see what the response is to that, because people work hard to make these movies. What is the actors, the crew, the visual effects department, and who knows, maybe this isn't even the final film. Things get tinkered with up until the day of release. So the actor isn't responsible for talking about the visual effects. They just do the work. They put in the performance. They're not going to give a flying fuck what somebody has to say about crash scenes. So, yeah, that's the appropriate response on the part of Adam Driver. I commend him for it, because at the end of the day, who gives a shit? I just gave the performance. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here talking about, the critics and, and all that. They don't want to hear that stuff. They rather rather be working on their next project or, hanging out with their family. They don't want to deal with you people. It's an obligation. It's under contract when you sign up to do a movie that you have to go out and do press. They only not let you do press if you're a negative, toxic person and you're going to put a bad reputation on the film.
Okay. And next, we have Amazon is in discussions to take over development of Masters of the Universe, the live action film. Look, it's a childhood favorite, the cartoon. I even like the crappy Dolph Lundgren film. I understand there's this whole big world. I've seen the YouTube development videos of what it was supposed to be at each different iteration, and there is a wealth to make a franchise out of it. But again, it comes back to the should they? I mean, it doesn't hurt, but I'm always for a one and done. I don't necessarily need a whole series of films of the Masters of the Universe. Plus, if they're still planning on using that actor Noah Centineo, I think who is miscast. Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, as long as they don't use him, I will be fine with whatever iteration they come out with. But he was totally wrong casting. That it felt like Netflix was only doing because he starred in half of their hit movies. So it was like, oh, here, take this. Finally something for you to star in. So yeah, I hope it gets picked up. But again, we can do this in one. We don't need a franchise like when Guy Ritchie wanted to do a whole King Arthur 8-film series. It's like, let's just focus on the first one, shall we?
I 100% agree. They should stick to one movie, see what the response is before you start trying to franchise the shit out of it. Because we've already seen with a few things now where they try to jump the gun. Oh, they have this whole 3-5 movie plan, and then the first one bombs, and then it's like, what's all that money being wasted on? Like the recent Exorcist movie, which we'll talk about one day. Only thing I disagree with, I don't think this should be an Amazon movie. Listen, Mattel just made $1 billion on Barbie. They actually now have a path of actually making good toy to movie adaptations. He-Man should be the next priority for the big screen treatment that they could actually get right with a major studio behind it. And, maybe you get an out of the box choice to direct it. I can't say off the top of my head who, maybe Louis Luthier. But you got to definitely get a good actor who can get into shape and play He-Man, and you get and get a solid actor, a solid, maybe Oscar-worthy actor to play Skeletor. And that could even be race swap because he's got a skeleton face. Anybody can play Skeletor. But He-Man is worthy of the big screen treatment. There are enough He-Man fans who grew up with the toys and the cartoon that would pay money to see it, more so than the Dolph Lundgren movie back when the franchise was just starting to lose interest and everybody was moving on Transformers and Ninja Turtles. So Amazon just doesn't feel like the right place to go. They'll probably maybe do a theatrical release before they put out in the theaters. I could see that, but you really want to make big money, it's got to go for a major studio, get a big theatrical release. And yes, stick to one movie before you start trying to franchise it.
Well, I feel like Masters of the Universe will be a little bit sci-fi, but more of a Conan movie, just less violent than those Conan movies. And if it ever gets made. Okay, moving on. Yeah, okay. Okay, moving on, we have Coyote versus Acme. Now, this is a movie that is live action and animated. It starred John Cena. Obviously, from the title, it has the Coyote suing the Acme company for all their products that basically blow up in his face. And even though it's completed, the film was shelved by WB, big shock, and now it was currently screened for other studios to buy up, and the screening went well because even those who weren't involved, I guess, in purchasing the film, there were a lot of, I guess, critics and actors and fans who all say that the movie is terrific and is probably one of the better of the Looney Tunes live action films. and it still has the original spirit of the Looney Tunes. I admit, when I first heard this title, I was like, okay, that's inventive, but I want to hear or see what this movie is actually about. And putting John Cena as the star didn't necessarily give me more faith. But with all these successful screenings, now it has piqued my interest into wanting to see that. And I'm pretty sure, since it's already done, that somebody will buy it up and we'll probably see it. Probably, unfortunately, on streaming. But you never know. Maybe it will be good enough to make it to the big screen.
My hope is it's not another Space Jam 2. From what I hear, yeah, the reviews are pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it was gonna be a Space Jam 2, I think
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, if it was gonna be another Space Jam 2, I think the studio would definitely want to bury it, not try to sell it off. They should have tried to sell off Space Jam 2, but they were like, let's be in the LeBron James business. Then, luckily for all of LeBron James' current productions, they all went to streaming because they all proved not to be good. And
yeah, like House Party.
Oh yes.
So yeah, my issue here isn't even with the Coyote versus Acme movie. Again, everything about it is good. It makes absolutely no sense that a film that was already getting such positive notices would just suddenly get pulled by the studio. This was Batgirl all over again, except the difference now was there was so much outrage. They're like, well, we'll put our stream network, but we'll try to shop it around. So basically, that was a big fuck you to Dylan Bilal with Batgirl, which is like, you could have given them that option, just like a one and done with that, let them finish the movie. But what I'm hearing is that this could be the last straw for David Zaslav at Warner Brothers, because now there's so much heat with his poor decision making that they're putting corporate profits over creativity. We could see the shareholders come to a place where they could maybe oust him, or at the very least end this arrangement with Discovery, maybe try to find a new buyer who actually will care to have their films put to completion. Because let's face it, this is the reality right now. After Batgirl and after this shit that they tried to pull with the Coyote movie, I can't see a lot of filmmakers want to work for Warner Brothers these days without the fear of their movie getting pulled because either it's not good or it's good, but it's not good enough. It's like comedians trying to go up on stage and worrying about Will Smith slapping them, or somebody like Will Smith coming out and trying to attack them. Who wants to work for Warner Brothers these days and have their movie get scrapped? Not me, not with these idiots in charge.
Yeah, and the thing is, there seems to be no rhyme and reason for some of these films why they got pulled. This just came out of nowhere for no reason. So it's like they don't even have real reasons. I mean, with Batgirl, the excuse was, oh, the reshoots were going to cost too much. But yet you have no problem putting more money into a problematic movie with a problematic star and releasing it and saying you had no other choice. So that's why I'm just like, you look at the reasons.
$100 million on that. So how's that look?
Exactly. And then you look at the petty reasons for these projects that really don't seem like they cost that much, like the Coyote movie or Batgirl. And you're just like, but you'll scrap those for regular production problems. Or with Coyote, who knows why? I don't know. Maybe you didn't like the filmmaker. He said something about your wife. I don't know. Yes, that seems how petty it is to not release the film. So, I agree. Why would you want to work for Warner Brothers? And the problem is, Warner Brothers owns all these properties. That's the big problem, though. And so, David Warner's turning over in his grave or gravesite. Next, Judd Apatow still wants to make This Is 50 pretty much his, I guess, a cinematic alter ego movies. I have no problem with it. I'm not the biggest fan of This Is 40. It was okay. But This Is 50. I am a fan of mid-sized budget movies, and I want to see more of them made, even if they are more personal projects. Or maybe that could be the whole thing with this film: make it more of an independent project, and then let a studio buy it up. Because obviously, I guess Judd Apatow has something to say about relationships and aging. So why not? It's could be his version of Albert Brooks movies, which who he put in This Is 40.
Yeah, this it sounds like he wants us to be his Before Sunrise trilogy of movies. He wants to keep going back to those same characters every 10 years to see what their lives are like. And I mean, I'm half and half on it. I'm with you. We definitely need those mid-sized budget comedies back. I don't feel like we're getting enough of them anymore. But Judd Apatow to me is like, for me, it was 40-Year-Old Virgin, and that was it. Yeah, I find his movies to be
Whoa.
overlong, a little dry, and quite frankly, he pisses me off on Twitter. He rubs me the wrong way.
Well, see, I've long been a Judd Apatow fan. I'm a fan, even though I don't think every project he's behind or makes is the greatest. But I don't mind them as much as maybe apparently you do. I'm more for this than, let's say, some other producers or some other actors, comedians who keep seeming to get their movies made, and it's like it's not that good. Here, I'll admit, I give it. Not every film is my cup of tea, and maybe, but I give him credit for wanting to get. He's sort of like an Uber producer where he gets stand-up comedians to stretch themselves to want to make projects and write it themselves for the big screen. Now, is everybody worthy of that? Not necessarily, because well, I look at Amy Schumer's Trainwreck. Say what you want about Amy Schumer now, but I felt like that film was pretty solid for what it was. But I can't stand behind, let's say, what was the one? The King of Staten Island. I can't necessarily stand behind that because, again, it's Pete Davidson telling us stuff he's already told us so many times before in his stand up and in interviews, and now you're just making it cinematic. Where that didn't necessarily speak to a certain it didn't talk to the audience at all, really, because it doesn't even have an ending. you know. So, and then he just changed all that and made Bupkis the series, which is just like the King of Staten Island, except he's successful. You know. So it's just, well, that's just one example. So, like I said, Judd Apatow, I'm glad he's encouraging others to make their films and being the man to stand behind them, because sometimes you do get gems, but then sometimes you get the King of Staten Island too. So I say, if this is the small price I have to pay, him making and or releasing This Is 50. Though I will admit, if I was a studio, if he was going to get This Is 50, I'm putting it on streaming. I'm not putting it out in the theater. It's, or I'd be like Netflix, where I'd be like, okay, it'll play in our theaters, but it's pretty much going to be played only on our streaming service. That's where I stand with that. And speaking of sequels, the cult horror film It Follows is finally getting a sequel called They Follow. After all these years, the star Makia Monroe is coming back, as well as writer-director David Mitchell, whose last film was another underrated film with Andrew Garfield, Under the Silver Lake. So I'm wondering, since that movie didn't exactly make the most money or set the world ablaze, is that why maybe he's kind of returning to the well? Or maybe after all these years, he finally came up with a good follow-up story, that everybody wanted, but now he's finally come up with it.
Sounds like money and likely just he needs the job. Maybe there was a demand for it. He didn't want to jump into it right away, and then he figured out a good idea for a sequel, and here we are. So hopefully it'll be as good as the original.
Yeah, all I'm asking is for it to make sense because It Follows is a movie that can be another one and done. Let the audience come up with how the rest of this is going to go. And now, if you're going to come back and you're bringing back the star, you've got to make it interesting somehow. I don't know if you're going to go to the origin tale. Is it pass on to somebody else and we follow them? Is it going to be like a Halloween where we kill her off in the opening minute and then the story continues? Who knows? Because all we have now is a title, you know. So, but I'm hoping for the best, and don't make this a Scream. That's all I'm hoping for. Mm. Next, since we're talking about sequels, Sicario 3 is in the works with the original cast returning. So that just really means you got to get Emily Blunt to come back and maybe Daniel Kaluuya because I mean Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro came back for the second one. But they're also getting Taylor Sheridan involved and Christopher McQuarrie. I'm just wondering, is Tom Cruise going to ultimately be the villain in the end? Is he
Yeah, they
going?
seem to think they have something with the Sicario franchise.
Yeah, I'm just like, hey, is Izai Morales going to be like, yo, I was in Mission Impossible and they're bringing me into Sicario land, baby?
And that's going to make some real money.
Yes, and Tom Cruise can be the head of the FBI, telling them, "You've got to get these Sicario. Don't make me get out of my chair and do some stunts." He could be like Lev Grossman again from Tropic Thunder,
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
just screaming on the phone. Most all his scenes are just that. Now that's the Sicario 3 I want to see. And have Charlie Sheen play a drug dealer.
Yeah, credit him as Carlos Estevez.
Exactly. Bring it all back home to the Brat Pack years. And then I'll be like, now this is a Sicario movie. And for our final story, Jason Statham is going to star in David Ayer's next film, Levon's Trade. But here's the interesting part it is directed by one Sylvester, I mean, it is written by one Sylvester Stallone. And
Yeah, I never read the books. I think the character is a bounty hunter or no, he's an ex-hitman and he retires from the business. He becomes a construction worker. He's trying to like be there for his daughter, and then something happens. He gets lured back into the world, and apparently the daughter gets caught up in it. So he has to protect her while protecting her against the bad guy. It's a whole like series of novels, from what I understand. And I don't know if Stallone had intended to star in it, and then he just passed it off to Statham, but it definitely feels that way. That Stallone is starting to like slowly pull back from action and trying to give Statham the rub as like sort of the next big action star to fill his shoes. Though that doesn't explain why Stallone wants to do a sequel to Samaritan, which I think had an okay ending to kind of lead for a sequel, but I don't know if people were leaving screaming for more.
no. And
But yeah, I guess he's found his second career for the last half of his life.
well, my thing is just you describing the story, I guess, of maybe the movie or the series of books. It sounds like the next Jason Statham movie that he has coming out. That where he's the
Yeah.
father and ex or whatever, and it gets called back in. This is pretty much Jason Statham's resume of roles all in one, pretty much. Mm. The only thing missing is he needs Guy Ritchie to direct it for it to be good. That's the only thing. Mm.
But I do get impressed. Like they always seem to get good actors around him. I don't know what it is when somebody goes and gives Felicia Rashad a script that says, here's an action movie with Jason Statham, and you say yes to it.
Hey, she got to work too. She got bills to pay. Broadway isn't everything, you know. And plus, she's got to get people to like her again
There must
after
be those
defending.
residual checks from the Cosby Show. They're just not coming anymore.
Well, she also has to get people to like her again after defending Bill Cosby so many times. And I mean, hey, she's been in Tyler Perry movies, so why not? And
oh yeah, he loves her.
Yeah, that's like the biggest name he can get next to Oprah. So we're going to end the new segment because all of you know SAG-AFTRA, the strike is over. So now we get into everybody's favorite part of the movies when they're not over 30 minutes long, the trailers. And so first up, as always, we got to go to Marvel. So the new Madam Web trailer dropped this week, starring Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney. I think those are the biggest stars that I remember in this trailer, and it's based on a character from the Spider-Man comic books that I've never read or seen. And Dakota Johnson plays the main character, an EMT who starts being able to predict the future or see the future before it happens. And she continuously has to save these three girls from a character who looks pretty much like a black suited Spider-Man. And apparently, this black Spider-Man character suit is trying to kill the three girls for, I guess they are a threat to the future. And I guess the whole thing of the film is, are these three girls heroes or are these three girls villains? You know, and it seems like this would play into the multiverse Spider-Man series, but what it comes off more as, it seems more like a Sony Marvel movie because that's how bad the trailer looks. Because I don't know if it's Dakota Johnson's voice inflections and the narration in her lines, but it sounds so unbelievable and horrible. Sydney Sweeney, I take it again, is playing a teenager. She looks like a woman. I don't know why she has to play another teenager. This movie just looks 2000 bad because it has all these quick cuts before you can even see anything, and it seems to focus on the action more than why should I be watching this movie and even care, you know? And realistically, the only parts of the trailer that feel like kind of Spider-Man-esque are the costumes. Other than that, this could have been a random thriller or some kind of Terminator movie reworked without, robots in it. Andre,
Yeah, Madam Web, I'm only aware of the character really from the Spider-Man cartoon, where it was like this old lady who just basically was like putting Spider-Man through the Spider-Verse and giving him all these challenges to face off against. And that was the extent of her. She wasn't really a hero. She wasn't a villain. She was sort of like a tweener kind of character. I don't know where anybody gets off thinking this is a character that's worthy of having her own movie. That just, again, reeks of desperation on Sony's part because they couldn't get the Black Cat and Silver Sable movie made. So there was like, oh, what's the next best thing? We'll just make her younger and hotter, and we'll just throw in Spider-Woman for the hell of it. Because that's what they're also building to, is they want to spin off Sydney Sweeney's, I believe she's playing Jessica Drew, who becomes Spider-Woman. They want to spin her off. And it's also designed to be their version of Doctor Strange, because they're going to have their own sort of like, this is our side of the multiverse crossing into the MCU. And it reeks, all of it, of desperation. It's just the costumes look very cheesy with the cinematography. And yeah, there's no investment in this character. Dakota Johnson just seems like there's a way she speaks that makes her come off wooden to me. That I think she's good looking, but very rough to watch as an actress, even though she does come from very good stock. And yeah, I'm just like, this is a cash in that I don't think anybody cares about. It's maybe a cut better than the Marvels because it is actually the director, S.J. Clarkson, who directed all the episodes of Jessica Jones. She's directing this movie. So there is like a little bit of that street vibe there, but I don't know if it works in this case. And that's why I just have no interest in this.
Do you think it's going to tie into Venom 3 at all?
I think that the plan is for this to tie into all the Sony Spider-Verse movies. So yeah, Venom, Morbius, Craven. They're just going to force it all together into something that's going to look very ugly.
So I take it you are not looking forward to seeing this movie.
Definitely not.
Okay. It's, our next trailer we're going to talk about is the much anticipated Fall Guy movie. Ryan Gosling is just having a year with IPs. You know, this is his stuntman character being a detective or investigating a case, yet again, like the series. And Winston Duke is around to play, I guess, kind of sidekick, friend, adversary. And Emily Blunt is a director / love interest. And watching this, I'll admit I'm intrigued, but I'm also getting Spencer for Hire, the Mark Wahlberg version, like vibes from this, you know? Whereas, like, oh, let's take this character, make him a little goofy, do these. Since he's a stuntman, we have reasons for all these spectacular Tom Cruise-esque stunts for him to do, except we know Ryan Gosling's using a stuntman. And, you know, and we have the love interest. And it seems just like that perfect summer, you know, let's take something old, try to make it new, try to make it goofy, but also tons of action. And, you know, it's got me a little, like, it's one of those, if there's nothing better, I don't mind going to see this. But, you know, it's not at the top of my list of movies I want to see next year either. How are you feeling about the trailer?
So I never watched the original Lee Majors series. And by the way, to break a little bit of news, Lee Majors isn't in the movie. He actually has a cameo in it. I don't know if he plays himself or maybe he plays Ryan Gosling's dad, but yeah, he's in it. I don't know if they're going to keep the theme song though, but that would be funny seeing Ryan Gosling singing the Fall Guy theme.
Why not? He did.
That's actually what sold the show was they pitched it with him singing. Yeah, why not? He could do it. You know, I could see Ryan Gosling do country music. Why not? You say it has the vibe of Spencer, and I definitely see that. I see a lot of the vibe of the Nice Guys because of the fact that it's a detective movie and it has like that scene where he's in the bathtub look like something out of that. Like it's almost like a sequel that's unintended to be one. Emily Blunt's character, believe it or not, is a reworked version of the Heather Thomas role, just sexed down, not sexed up.
Please. And
I don't know who if Woodson Duke is playing the white dude that he would be teamed up with on the show. I don't know. It was cool seeing the truck in there. The Lee Majors truck is in the movie. You know, I don't know if he actually rides it. So this some nods. It looks like, you know, a fun time waster of a flick. And I mean, again, if I'm bored, maybe I'll go to Alamo and pay to see it. I'm half and half because, like I said, I didn't grow up on the show, but I kind of like the idea that it's not really a sacred cow that you could just like not do this. I'm just like wondering who's playing the Marquis Post part. That's what I'm very interested to know.
Well, my thing would be more Emily Blunt. Well, I guess because Heather Thomas and Lee Major's character were never romantically involved. She was more like the sidekick secretary, you know, who was the eye candy for the show, but she was never like an integral part. So that's why I'm like Emily Blunt. So there's gonna be no eye candy. It's like Die Hard, what 5, where they had that trailer with the Russian chick in the leather suit unzipping out of the leather jacket, and you're like, wow. And then you go to the movie, it's like it's not in here at all. So that's what it feels like with this movie. It's like, Where's the eye candy for the guys who are going to want to go see this movie? Because I know it's not going to be the woman who was in oh, the one who was in Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, she's not going to be the eye candy.
Yeah,
So,
no, no.
so that's I like I said, I'm interested.
But I will say, by the way, Heather Thomas is a very nice woman, and I'd like to have her on the show.
I would love it if she was in this movie. They gave Lee Majors. He was like 90.
Bring anybody back.
Exactly. It's going to be like watching Bruce Dern in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's probably going to have to lay down or sit down for his scenes. And don't insult Ryan Gosling. If Lee Majors playing anything, it's his granddad. It's not his dad. Unless he got a late start. So, so that is the Fall Guy. Next, we have the inevitable Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the long-awaited sequel reboot to the movies that had James Franco in the first one and Jason Clarke in the sequels. I'm looking forward to this. Again, I'm not a big original Planet of the Apes fan from the 60s. So, you know, this seems more like that type of movie where, you know, the apes, the humans are scarce, the apes are running society, you know, and they're learning to live, I guess, together, but it doesn't seem as much of a war. It seems now the monkeys are at war with themselves more than anything. So that's an interesting take, but I don't know, is this just like a proper sequel, or is this they want to start a whole new trilogy or series of films? Because I don't believe the original director is back. So
yeah, it's now Wes Ball's taking over from Matt Reeves with the franchise, and yeah, I think it's supposed to kick off a new trilogy that follows from the last three movies. With Caesar's son, I think, is the one that's still alive, and basically it's his story now, and building, probably continuing to build to the Charlton Heston movie. I don't. This is not going to tie in with the Mark Wahlberg movie. Hopefully not.
No, definitely.
And I look forward to it because I like the Planet of the Apes movies. I thought they were probably some of the best reboots of a franchise in quite some time, and I didn't grow up on the Charlton Heston one. So yeah, I think you continue it well. You have the apes at war with themselves, the different factions, and yeah, just those slow setups to where we are once we get to the 1968 movie. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I have more faith because Wes Ball's directing it. As one of the 5 people who like the Maze Runner and their sequels, I think it has promise, and he has promise as a director. So I'm hoping for the best here. And next we have Roleplay, which stars Kaylee Kuko and David Oyelowo as a married couple with a child, and everything seems to be perfectly happy until he finds out that his wife is a government assassin. And this seems like it would be familiar and played for laughs, but this seems more like an action thriller more than anything. And I have to hand it to Kaylee Kuko. Her career has taken an upswing ever since 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Dad, thinking that might be the end of it. And then she got into, The Big Bang Theory, which kind of upped her career. And the choices she's made since that show went off the air have been spot on. The Flight Attendant, which was very successful as a series. I think it has another season coming. Doing the voice of Harley Quinn in the animated Harley Quinn series. Even being in Kevin Hart movies for some odd reason, as the girl in most of them, not a romantic interest, has kind of worked out for her. And I'm kind of happy that her career has taken this upswing, and this looks like a very interesting starring project for her. So I'm actually looking forward to it, even though it's not going to be on the big screen. I believe it's going to be on Amazon, but I'm looking forward to watching it.
I want to see it too. It reminds me of True Lies, that same kind of like, oh, the spouse is a government agent and stuff. I just think the combination of Kayla Kugo and David Oyelowo is kind of a weird one. I'm not going to say why, but it's not the obvious. Just personalities are kind of different there. But that does make it more interesting for me to want to see how it plays out. So yeah, I'll check it out.
Okay. Next we have the uh, out of Sundance. Sometimes I think about death, which stars Daisy Ridley as, I guess, a morose, possibly suicidal woman who can't seem to get along with anybody, but starts a kind of slow friendship and romance with a new guy at work who wants to get to know her and find out why she is the way she is. Um, it's interesting. It seems like a Sundance movie, indie kind of romance with a problem. I don't know if I'd rush out to go see it, but I guess if it got the right notices and maybe acclaim, I'd be going to see it. I mean, I think this is just Daisy Ridley trying to show that she can be a dramatic actress more than anything. Show I'm more than Star Wars. But no, it's a nice try, and I hope the movie is as good that I'm selling it. you know. So, like I said, if it's on streaming, I might give it a shot. And
Yeah, for some reason, this is already reminding me of another movie with a Daisy called "Where the Crawdads Sing" with Daisy Edgar Jones. It almost feels like the same premise to some degree, and yeah, I'm with you. Hopefully, it's like a solid performance for Daisy Ridley, where she could show she's not just Ray, because that's been one of the issues she's had outside of Star Wars is the fact that anything else she does, she comes off a little wooden and stiff. Here, it looks like okay, this is a real character she's playing, and maybe this is something that I'm not going to say you're going to get her an Oscar, but it probably could show people, hey, I could do other things, and best for her, because I don't want to see her do more Star Wars. She should be done with that. Move on.
well, this one at least less crawdads. Um, next we have, since we were talking about Sydney Sweeney, uh, Anyone But You, which stars her and Glenn Powell as two people who had a one night stand years ago and find themselves on a destination wedding, and both their exes who broke their hearts are going to be there. So to show them up, they decide to try and act like a couple, even though they can't stand each other. Um, I like Glenn. I like both actors. I like Sydney Sweeney. I like Glenn Powell. But when I saw from the director of Friends with Benefits, that is what this movie immediately reminded me of, because it just seems like another movie of two impossibly beautiful people who get together, and it's kind of a TNA comedy, because most of the trailer, it tries to have that, spark one upman shit of when it comes to lines, but most of it focuses on each of their bodies in undress and the tightness of it. And that's not a bad thing, but that's what I feel like this movie is more about. And obviously, if I'm going to watch this movie, I'm more trying to see Sydney Sweeney in tight stuff or out of tight stuff, more than anything. I'm not going because I think the trailer's hilarious or this is a must see. Like I said, I don't think I'd go to a theater to watch this, but I definitely would watch it on streaming. And it seems more like a streaming movie than than something you'd see in a theater. And I thought originally they wanted this to be like a holiday release, but I guess with them pushing back movies, this was one of those that got pushed back also.
Yeah, this feels like one of those old high concept movies of just take a wacky premise and then just find the next hot stars to throw in it. There's nothing really all that special that I see there. I'd like to be seeing Glenn Powell play more, action roles and more straight parts versus doing stupid romantic comedies. Uh, um, yeah, this is totally a chick flick. This is one you take a date to.
Okay. Next we have rare horror film in the trailer previews, Imaginary, starring Kiana Paris, who appears to be a foster mother who inherits two, not only a house, but two little white girls in her charge. And one of them seems to have an imaginary friend through this teddy bear who keeps setting up all these like little stunts or challenges for them to do. And as the movie goes along, it seems this imaginary friend might be real. It's from Bloomhouse. This seems like a kind of a typical horror film involving kids. It already looks way better than Five Nights at Freddy. And, you know, it just seems like this is more a, I'm not going to say a family horror film, but maybe like for that Megan crowd, even though less campiness. As it seems like it's going to be a horror film that seems like it's going to be more silly and not in a comedic way than scary or violent than anything. I would like to say I probably wouldn't go to see it, but when I first saw the Megan trailer, at first I thought I wouldn't go see it either, and then I went and saw it and enjoyed it. I don't think it's going to be the same thing for this movie, but let it live. We'll see if it gets an audience or if it starts a whole new franchise. What are your feelings on this imaginary trailer?
So when I first on it, I thought it was going to be like a dark version of Ted. I thought it was going to be like basically the same concept, but if the Ted doll actually was like killing people rather than smoking weed with Mark Wahlberg. And instead, it's just I look at it, it looks like another Annabelle, like just another it's an evil toy that kills people, and yeah, I got the Megan vibes in there too. I just was like, you could do so much more with this premise. This is something that you're trying to play on the psychological aspect of it, and I'm like, no, you should have this actual thing come to life and kill people. And I don't even get that sense you do that. It just sits there and then you do some Omen level shit. So, I'm gonna wait for this one on the Peacock.
Yeah, it seems like a PG-13 horror type film, not a rated R horror type film.
Yeah.
Next, we have Lift with Kevin Hart and Gugu Mbatha-Raw. As I take it, he runs a crew that pulls heist, and she's an FBI agent who basically blackmails him and his crew into pulling off a heist on a plane, basically stealing a plane, because the gold on the plane is going to fuel terrorists. And it also stars Vincent D'Onofrio as a member of his crew. This is more of an action type film with bits of comedy where Kevin Hart isn't screaming scared of everything. So this is, I guess, Kevin Hart trying to bone up his filmography and try to be tough after that horrible series Die Hard. It would have been interesting if John Travolta was the villain in this. But it's on Netflix. I'm more inclined to watch this than that Gal Gadot this action extravaganza movie where we're supposed to be convinced she does all these stunts. So I'll watch this. I'll admit, Gugu Mbatha-Raw is more drawing me into this movie, and Vincent D'Onofrio's casting. They're the two major factors that are like dragging me into this movie more than anything. Though I don't know how the Latina actress in the movie is going to be, but I immediately when I saw the trailer, I was like, why is Nadine Velasquez not in this from Flight? She seems like she would be a natural. Maybe it's because she was on Real Husbands of Hollywood with him on that, so it would be like, oh, this seems too incesty. But we'll see. But yeah, it seems like it's okay. It's one of those Netflix movies I'm surprised isn't going on the big screen rather than just going to Netflix.
Yeah, first, I don't want to sound racist or sexist, but Gugu Mbatha-Raw and seeing that woman, it's like I don't get the connection. Like I can't see a woman like that with that kind of a name. That's my whole thing.
Okay.
There. But this movie, on one hand, it feels like they're trying to spin off Kevin Hart's cameo in Hobbs and Shaw. It seems like they're taking that character, giving him a 2-hour movie. There's no Fast and Furious in the title. And secondly, I'm getting the vibes of that movie Next Day Air with who's it, Mike Epps?
Ooh. Oh no.
Somebody like it had like
Yeah, I've
nobody in
seen.
it, but it was like a dark R-rated action comedy. Yeah, that was the vibe I was getting, and that's really not a good thing when you see Kevin Hart in what's supposed to be like a semi-serious action comedy, and Vincent D'Onofrio is in it, and I guess Gugu Mbatha-Raw is like the love interest. I'm just like, I probably would again see it just to review, and I might be bored, but I'm like, I look at Kevin Hart, I can't take him seriously.
Well, this is definitely not Next Day Air because this
Certainly
actually
can't take him seriously in an action movie.
Well, that's why they gave you the comedic aspect, and he's the leader. So, like, all the hard work is done by everybody else. But also, this can't be Next Day Air because this movie looks like it has $100 million budget. Next Day Air did not look like it had $100 million. And the thing with Next Day Air is you sit through the whole film waiting for action, and it's like in the final scene, and it's not that impressive. Whereas this, you could tell there's going to be action sequences. This looks like a Zack Snyder film that he didn't direct because it wasn't expensive enough for him. Like I said, I have a little bit more faith in this film, but I do agree with you that it does look like a Hobbs and Shaw character spinoff movie more than anything. So much so that I wanted the crew from Die Hard back. I was like, Natalie Emmanuel, where is she? She should be in this. Even if she's just a right-hand woman assassin, I will watch it for her. And same thing with Gugu Mbatha-Raw. I will watch anything with her in it, no matter how horrible. I watched that Cloverfield movie, so mainly for her. So why not this? And it's directed by F. Gary Gray, so I have a little bit more faith in this film too. And so, who has directed one of the Fast and Furious movies? Next, we have Ghostbusters, Frozen. Obviously it's a Ghostbusters sequel where New York is frozen stiff and people are dying by being frozen to death. And, the crew is back, including the original crew, obviously minus Harold Ramis or his ghost. And watching the trailer, I was like, I'm happy. Hey, Bill Murray's back. Dan Aykroyd's back. Ernie Hudson is back. But it also seems to go out of its way to kind of be a little racist because, okay, the black girl, we see she gets frozen almost immediately. And where's little Gizmo, the Asian kid? Because at the end, we see Paul Rudd, I forget the other actress who plays the mother, her, and their two kids as the Ghostbusters. What happened to all the minorities that we introduced in the last film? Oh, they're expendable now? You know who else is expendable? But is it because he's a name? Paul Rudd in this movie. Because the last movie, sure, he was there for name recognition, provided some comedy, but did he have to be in this one? No. We got Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd. We got enough star power. So that is my main complaint. Plus, again, I don't know. This just seems like a lame episode of the animated series cast off, brought into live action. This doesn't seem like an event that the Ghostbusters movies should be, It just feels like, I don't know if you're familiar with the cartoon, but remember the one with the guy who played the flute and was bringing the end of the world, and he had a best friend who was sort of like a hunchback, and he was doing it all because some woman broke his heart. That's what this feels like one of those type of episodes. Like, it has nothing to do really with the Ghostbusters. It's some ancient shit that they're not involved in, but they got to deal with. And I'm just like, I'll probably be dragged along to this movie, but I'm not excited for this film, but I'll probably go see it. And
so I got some news for you, Jeff. They did actually take inspiration from the cartoon for this movie. So yeah, that's why it looks the way it looks.
Okay.
As far as the characters of Lucky and podcasts, the kids, yeah, that struck me weird too because the way it came off in Afterlife, it seemed like the four kids were going to be the new team. But now you see all the promos and advertisements for this, and now it seems like it's McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, Carrie Coon, and Paul Rudd. Basically, the two kids, the mother, and then I guess now she's with Paul Rudd's character, and they've been kind of like they're there, but I guess they're going to be frozen and they have to be thought out in the plot. So yeah, and it's a shame, especially with podcasts, if that's the case. I really love that character. He stood out as my favorite because like a little Dan Aykroyd. I'm gonna assume that the OGs are gonna get killed off in some way because I don't think Bill Murray would come back just to be there. I think they would off Peter Venkman and turn him into a ghost, which is something he wanted to do for a long time. If they don't, I'd be fine with that too. But I think that's my theory on that. But the movie itself, the thing that I'll say that I'll give two things. One is they toned down the member berry stuff, which again I really enjoyed Afterlife. I cried at the end. I mean, we reviewed it a while back, but I will say, you know, in retrospect, that they did overdo it with all the Easter eggs and oh, remember the ghost trap, remember this and that, and reciting all the old lines. Here it looks like okay, it's a new story, it's a new villain. Let's go. We don't need to keep going back to the past or bring up stuff from Ghostbusters too. Yeah, the only big thing is that William Atherton comes back as Walter Peck, and it looks like he gets frozen too. So other than that, hopefully they've toned that down. They've learned their lesson, maybe to just pull back on that, focus on a new story, a new threat. Don't bring back Gozer, don't bring back Vigo. Just make this a new Ghostbusters movie, pass it on to the new generation. And I'm sure it'll do fine. Or if it makes less money, it's going to be because, okay, now the nostalgia's worn off. People are willing to move on from it. But as a fan, I look forward to it. I'm definitely going to see it opening day, and I hope it's good.
Okay. I also find it interesting. Do you think there was less Bill Murray in this because he's kind of a little bit being canceled publicly? And
It's possible, but it's still Bill Murray at the end of the day, and it's like this is how he's been for decades. So it's one thing to cancel Bill Cosby for raping a bunch of women, or canceling Army Hammer, the not charging him. But Bill Murray, there's just some people. It's like when they tried to cancel Ric Flair after the Dark Side of the Ring episode because he flopped his weenie in front of a flight attendant. Yeah, it's bad. It was horrible behavior, and he should be, trashed for that. But he's still Ric Flair. He's still a legend and an icon in the wrestling business, and you can only cancel him for like maybe a couple weeks before you put him back on TV and everybody loves him again. So same thing with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's a racist, but he put a lot of people in business, and he actually ended up making wrestling popular again. So you can't fully cancel the guy because of that. You just have to separate the man from the character. That's not easy to do. So that's how I feel about Bill Murray. Yeah, he's not somebody you want to meet in real life, but you can't deny his genius as a comedian and as a movie star.
okay. And for our final trailer, we have the Mean Girls reboot, which is based on the Broadway hit play of Mean Girls, and it even brings back Tina Fey. It brings back why am I blanking on his name? He played the principal, Tim Meadows, but obviously whole new cast of characters playing the familiar roles of the plastics and all. And my thing is, I will say I was excited to see the recent Target ad where they pretty much had the cast reunited as their older versions of their characters. Look, I'm a Mean Girls fanatic, so I like the idea of the Mean Girls, the musical, being on Broadway, and I wanted to see it. I never got a chance to. But making it into a movie so fast, that's a little disturbing, and it's hitting familiar beats that people who've seen the movie or know the movie, it's hitting too much where you're like, I already know this line. Now I'm watching another different person play the same character, play it, and maybe with some songs involved. It's just too much. And obviously they diversify because again, now Damien's character is an overweight black gay guy. Um, I think the characters all more kind of look more their age than maybe in the original film. But you also it's just I'm probably gonna go see it nonetheless because I saw Mean Girls the first one opening day, so I'm probably gonna see it. But I don't know. It has that taste of familiarity, and I know they're gonna try to make it different, so it's its own entity. But I'm just like it has that been there, done that thing. It's sort of like watching a school play version of a popular play. Like they could be as good as they want, but it's not Broadway. So that's what it feels like watching this movie. It's never going to be my Mean Girls. Maybe it'll be the Mean Girls for the next generation with dancing and singing, but it's not the same for me. So, but I'll probably go see it. How are you feeling about this Mean Girls reboot?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's too soon to do something like this. I mean, the movie's only like 20 years old. When they did the remake of Footloose as a musical, that was what, 30 years after the original came out. And
Exactly.
here it's yeah, it looks like I don't know if it's the same director, but it's like the
It's
same
not.
look, the same cinematography. Yes, Tina Fey and Tim Meadows playing the same exact character, so you're expecting probably some of the same jokes, maybe just slightly twisted up. And yeah, the just different actresses playing those iconic roles, and it just feels like okay, as a musical, yes, you can do it as just a straight musical on Broadway that people can enjoy, like the Back to the Future musical, but to then do it as a movie just strikes me as odd. Like I would have preferred just a straight sequel where they're reunited for like a high school reunion. That makes more sense, especially now that Lindsay Lohan's problems are long in the distant past. But here it's
Exactly.
just okay, maybe you're trying to get a new generation into this, but they could stick to the old movie, just like you stick with Clueless and all the others. Why do you have to remake something 20 years after the fact? I know the twist is now a musical with the same people. It just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like a cheap cash in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I feel. But I know me. I will drag myself to go see it. And if anything, I'll just hate watch it. Like, yeah, the original did it better throughout the whole movie. Um, so that wraps up our business this week in this supersized edition of Unfinished Business Television, the November issue. But as always, we have plenty of unfinished business to deal with. But before we go, I have to ask you, have you watched Paper Moon with Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal, directed by Peter Bogdanovich? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome. Andre, what film would you tell the people they should see?
Have you seen the movie Tightrope with Clint Eastwood? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
And that is where we have to bid you adieu until next.